kind of self-intro I've heard a lot, okay? But in that kind of self-intro, although it's all about your personal life, you can say, oh, it's one aspect, it's about my personal life. But there's so many different directions for that personal life, it makes it hard for people to remember, okay? After all, when you speak, what do you want to do? You want to communicate to people. You want people to remember you. You want to say something that they will always remember you by. So, selecting careful information about yourself, so they will always, even if they forget your name, they will always remember you as a person. That's effectiveness, okay? Oftentimes we talk, but we don't care about what other people hear or understands, okay? And that's wrong. Speaking, even if it's one way, you are the speaker, it's not really just one way, it's also listener interaction. The listener may not be speaking because you're the only one that's speaking, but your listeners are involved also in their head. So how do you, as a speaker, make it effective, make it impressive, memorable for your audience? And that's very important. It's the part of interaction that people don't address as much. All right, so going back to the self-intro. When you focus on your one aspect, your aspect should tell who you are and what you're about. So if you're an athletic, then explain, this is what you do and what kind of thing do you participate in terms of being athletic. So dragon boat race is something that Ellen is into. So she can probably talk about how many years she's been trained to, how many prizes she's won, and how often, and how that kind of race really developed her personality of endurance and so on and so forth. So everything is related to that athletic ability, okay? And know your audience, and we've talked about this. Why is this important? You need to tailor your information to the right group of people, okay? So if you know a little bit about who the audience is, you will be able to pick better information to meet the listener's needs, okay? So remember, speaking is never just one way. Even if you're speaking by yourself, it's always two ways. The listeners are interpreting what you are saying, all right? Does anybody have any question? Okay, let's continue. So, we talked about structure of an effective self-intro, okay? And you're right, focusing, once you have that one aspect in your head, how do you develop this effective self-intro in 1 minute? You have to have a good outline. And typically, your first sentence is your attention-getting sentence, or your topic sentence. So it's not only just your topic sentence, but how you catch people's attention. Okay, so if today your focus is going to be how horrifying it is for you to speak in front of a group of audience, you can come up, your attention-getting audience is, do you know how I feel right now? I'm shivering. This is the most difficult aspect of my life. And today I'm going to share with you one limitation I have about myself in introducing myself to you, and then you can focus on speaking speaking in front of a group of audience. Okay, so that attention-getting statement is very important. How do you give a sentence to grab people's attention, to make people want to listen to you right away? I'm going to participate in a Dragon Boat Race Festival next week. And people say, what? Have I heard that wrong? That's attention-getting, okay? So your attention-getting can be funny. It could be a statement that's very direct, that shocks people. It could be a funny nickname, okay? It could be really anything that you do that's unique in order to catch people's attention, all right? So your first sentence is always your topic sentence, and it's always going to be attention-getting. Now you're going to think, when are you going to stop? I'm going to stop pretty soon, because then it will be your turn to follow this outline to make a self-intro, because there are still a lot of people we don't know in this class, right? Okay, so once you grab the attention of the people, you're moving into your topic, you need to give some background information. For instance, if you are talking about your athletic ability, why this is such an important part of your life, the kind of training you have perhaps, and why this aspect is particularly interesting to, I see people taking photograph of this PPT. Do you love it so much? You can keep it later. You don't have to take pictures. I will leave a copy for you guys, and you can just get it from Ivy. I am purposely not included, I have not included this PPT to your handbook because I didn't want you to review. And first time I don't want students to review because there are things I want you to think about as we go. But after the presentation, you will get a copy. So don't worry. Okay, I always get sidetracked. Okay, so going back to giving your background information, why is this important to your central idea? To give people a little bit background to what it is that you're going to be discussing a little later on. Okay, and then you work out your topic, the fact that you're athletic in a few sentences. Okay, this can be 3 to 4 or 2 or 3 sentences, depending. Now, generally in 1 minute, 6 to 8 sentences probably will do, okay? If your sentences are really short, then perhaps 10. But if you follow this kind of outline, you shouldn't have more than 8 sentences, okay? And then you give an example. This is very important. You talk about your athletic ability, about how much endurance you have, how much strength you have, and so on and so forth. But if you don't support your idea with an example. So for example, in order to train myself for Dragon Boat race, I had to run whatever and I participated in whatever. So you have to give an example to illustrate your central idea, your one aspect. And then, do you make a conclusion? Always. You conclude by offering a memorable answer that people may have while they listen to you. So you have to anticipate on possible questions that your audience might have that you haven't covered, to leave a kind of long-lasting impression for people to want to talk to you after the self-intro, okay? Yeah, so about 5 points, so about 5 sentences, and then with an example, you may have 2 or 3, so together, you shouldn't have more than 8 sentences. And if you are a fast speaker, like I am sometimes, you might be able to squeeze in 10, okay? But still, within 1 minute. Now, why do I set 1 minute self-intro? I mean, I can be here and talk about myself for half an hour. Why do I say 1 minute? Yes? Can you speak up? I can't hear you. Why do I say 1 minute?
Because we're talking about effectiveness.
In 1 minute. Your first impression is very short, right? Okay? Actually, there's a reason for why I selected to 1 minute. According to research, people, when they listen to presentations and things, to a speech or lecture, they can really just focus and remember what you say in the first minute. And afterwards, it's a waste of time. So, I always try to limit my speaking as much as possible, but then my students would always say, you give us all the job. You don't do anything because you make us do all the talking. Because when I talk, people fall asleep, but when students talk, they don't fall asleep themselves, right? So anyway, but that's a sidetrack. So according to research, is that 1 minute, the first minute, that's very important. It's that 1 minute that's going to determine how people evaluate you, how people will remember you, and the information should always be stated right away, important information. So that 1 minute is very crucial. Okay? Now, of course, if you're given more time, you have 5 minutes, you can elaborate and you can go on, but be sure that people won't remember as much as you would want them to. Okay? Unless you have intermission in between. So really, I understand that. Probably most of you have heard my focus on my first agenda, and you haven't gone too far since then, which I totally understand according to research. But anyways, so is there any question on this possible outline before I go on? No? Great. Now it is your turn. But before you go on to your turn, if you think, oh my God, you're going to make me do a self-intro, I haven't prepared for it. I will give you some guiding questions. So how do you choose that one aspect that you can share? These are some guiding questions